My name is Aaliyah Roberts. I am 29 years old. And this is the story my parents never wanted me to tell. The first time they called me useless, I was 15. You? In medical school? My father had scoffed, his voice sharp as glass. You can barely pass your algebra test. Mother stood by the sink, drying dishes with quick, angry flicks of her wrists. Aaliyah, be serious. Your brother, now that's a child we can be proud of.
You?
You're always in your room, always daydreaming. Do something practical for once. My older brother, Marcus, 3 years ahead of me, had already secured a scholarship to Stanford. The golden child, the pride of the Roberts family. And me? I was the burden, the constant disappointment. The more they criticized, the harder I tried. But every achievement, no matter how small, was dismissed like a leaf in the wind. When I won the state science fair, my father barely looked up from his newspaper. Well, that's nice.
But can you maintain that?
Their words stuck to me like wet clothes, heavy and suffocating. You're not smart enough. You're too sensitive. You'll never make it. By the time I graduated high school, I had stopped sharing my dreams altogether. My acceptance letter to a pre-med program was met with a cold, silent dinner. Not even a congratulation. But the resentment? It grew in my bones like a second skeleton. College was an escape. I worked 2 jobs, pulled all-nighters, and buried myself in books while my classmates partied. Every failure was a slap I took silently. Every tiny victory, a secret rebellion. And then came my first real breakdown. It was during sophomore year. Finals week. My shift at the diner ran late, and I barely had time to sleep. As I reviewed anatomy flashcards, my hands trembled. My chest tightened. The tears came without warning. Maybe they're right, I whispered to myself in that tiny dorm room. Maybe I'm not enough. But somewhere in the swirl of hopelessness, a tiny ember refused to die. You're allowed to cry, my roommate, Kayla, said softly, sitting beside me. But you're not allowed to quit. Not if this is your dream. And it was my dream. Not for them.
For me.
The years that followed were brutal. I graduated. I fought through med school applications. I got rejected, reapplied, rejected again. But I kept going. When I finally got my acceptance into a mid-tier medical school, I cried in my car for 30 minutes straight. Not because anyone was proud of me, but because I was proud of me. By residency, I had become a ghost to my family. Invitations to Thanksgiving dried up. Phone calls went unanswered. Except for Marcus. My perfect brother. We texted sometimes. He always said, "I'm proud of you, sis," but never in front of our parents. He didn't want to rock the boat. 6 years later, I stood in that hospital hallway, wearing my white coat with my name embroidered. Dr. Aaliyah Roberts, MD, Chief Resident. The call had come early that morning. Your brother has been admitted. Car accident. Severe head trauma. He's asking for you. My heart nearly stopped. Marcus. My only ally in that cold house I once called home. When I arrived, the nurse at the station glanced up, her eyes wide. Are you the chief doctor assigned to this case? I took a breath.
Yes.
I am. The door opened slowly. And there he was. Bruised, bandaged, but awake. Aaliyah. Marcus whispered, his voice dry but steady. You made it. I blinked back tears. Of course I did. And then I heard the familiar voices behind me. What is she doing here? My father's sharp voice cut through the air like a whip. He stepped into the room, my mother trailing behind, her face tight with disapproval. She's my doctor, Marcus said firmly, surprising even me. Father's eyes widened as they landed on my white coat. Doctor? You? Yes, I answered, my voice calm but fierce. The same useless daughter you gave up on. The one you never believed in. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I stood taller than them. But this was only the beginning. The real test was yet to come. The hours after my confrontation with my parents were a blur. I couldn't afford to process emotions right then. Marcus needed me. His CT scan shows minor bleeding, but we caught it early, I explained to the neurosurgeon. We need to monitor him closely over the next 48 hours. Dr. Roberts, the surgeon nodded. He's lucky you got here so fast. I stayed by Marcus' bedside for most of the night. Every beep from the monitor felt like a countdown to either hope or disaster. Occasionally, Marcus would stir, his eyes fluttering open briefly. Each time he saw me, a soft smile crossed his lips before exhaustion dragged him back under. At 3 a.m., as the hospital quieted, I finally stepped out for a moment. My parents were sitting in the dimly lit family lounge. Aaliyah, my mother said quietly, as if tasting my name for the first time in years. How did you become a doctor? Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't proud. It was confused. I looked at her, years of hurt rising like bile in my throat. I worked for it, every single day, while you pretended I didn't exist. My father shifted uncomfortably. You could have told us. Would it have mattered? I shot back. Every time I tried to share my dreams, you shot them down. You made sure I felt worthless. We just didn't want you to get your hopes up and fail, he muttered, unable to meet my gaze. No, I said, my voice breaking slightly. You didn't want me to embarrass you. The air between us thickened with the weight of unspoken years. We were hard on you, my mother admitted, her eyes glistening. But it was to toughen you up. Life isn't easy. I laughed bitterly. I didn't need you to toughen me. I needed you to believe in me. The silence was suffocating. Aaliyah, my father finally said, softer than I'd ever heard him, we were wrong. The words I had longed to hear felt hollow. 6 years too late. The next morning, Marcus was stronger. You saved me, sis, he whispered. You saved yourself, I smiled. I was just doing my job. You were always meant for this, he said. I knew it even when they didn't. My chest ached with gratitude. Thank you for always being my only supporter. Maybe it's time they see who you really are. Later that afternoon, hospital administrators arrived. They wanted to interview me for the hospital's internal newsletter, the youngest chief resident in the hospital's history. As the photographer snapped pictures of me beside Marcus's bed, my parents watched silently from the doorway. Our daughter, my mother whispered, almost as if testing the words aloud. Dr. Roberts. For the first time, I saw something new in her eyes. Not pride, not regret, something else. Fear. They could no longer control me. My worth was undeniable, and it had nothing to do with their approval. But this was only the beginning of their reckoning. The world would soon know the full truth about what they did to me. 2 days later, Marcus was stable enough to be moved to a private recovery room. The danger had passed, but the emotional storm was just beginning. As I walked into his room with his latest scans in my hand, I noticed my parents sitting awkwardly in the corner, fidgeting like strangers in a courtroom. The silence between them and me was thick, heavier than all the medical jargon I had to digest over the years. His scans look good, I said professionally. No signs of delayed swelling or bleeding. He'll make a full recovery with time. Marcus gave me a weak thumbs up. Told you I'd be fine. My father cleared his throat. Aaliyah, can we talk? Privately. I glanced at Marcus, who nodded slightly. I'll be okay. We stepped into a nearby consultation room. My mother followed, nervously wringing her hands. My father started, his voice oddly gentle. Your mother and we've been thinking about everything. I crossed my arms. That must be exhausting. He winced. We made mistakes. We were harsh. Too harsh. But we thought we were protecting you. The world is cruel, Aaliyah. We wanted you to be strong. Strong? You tried to break me. I snapped, unable to keep the bitterness contained. You made me feel worthless for most of my life. I didn't need protection. I needed parents. We were scared, my mother interjected, tears pooling in her eyes. Scared you wouldn't make it, that you'd struggle, that you'd fail, and we didn't want to see you hurt. So instead, you hurt me first, I whispered, my voice trembling. You beat the world to it. My father stepped closer. We are proud of you now, Aaliyah. Truly. The word now stung more than I expected.
Now?
When it costs you nothing. When I've done everything without you. My mother sobbed. Please, baby, forgive us. I shook my head, my eyes burning. Forgiveness isn't a switch I can flip. Not after years of silence, rejection, and humiliation. For a moment, no one spoke. And then my father whispered something that shook me to my core. We were all so jealous. What? I blinked. Of your resilience. Your fight, he admitted, his voice breaking. We thought we were the strong ones, but watching you rise despite everything, it terrified us. You didn't need us. And that made us feel powerless. My mother buried her face in her hands, sobbing harder. I felt my legs weaken. My breath caught. For so long, I imagined their hatred was rooted in disappointment. But jealousy? That was a poison I never expected. Days passed. Marcus continued to heal. My parents made small efforts, bringing food, sitting quietly during my rounds, occasionally offering awkward compliments. I appreciated their presence, but trust was not something they could rebuild with a few kind words. One afternoon, as I reviewed Marcus' latest lab work, he looked at me seriously. You know, you don't have to keep punishing yourself by carrying this anger forever. I'm not punishing myself, I said defensively. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference between protection and imprisonment, sis. His words pierced deeper than he knew. You deserve to be happy, Aaliyah, he continued softly. Not for them. For you. You fought for everything you have. Don't let their past mistakes rob you of peace now. I swallowed hard. I don't know if I can ever fully trust them again. Maybe you don't have to, but you can choose to free yourself from the weight of their failures. You deserve that freedom. That night, I sat alone in the hospital chapel. The soft hum of the air conditioner was the only sound. I whispered into the silence. Why wasn't I enough for them? A voice inside answered gently. You were always enough. You just weren't what they wanted. For the first time in years, the tears came not from pain, but from release. I had won my battle, but perhaps it was time to stop fighting a war that no longer needed my energy. And as I wiped my face, I realized the next chapter of my life wouldn't be about proving them wrong. It would be about finally choosing myself. But fate wasn't done testing me yet. 3 weeks later, the storm I never saw coming arrived. I was sitting at my desk finishing patient reports when my supervisor, Dr. Callahan, knocked gently and stepped in. His face was serious. Aaliyah, we need to talk. My stomach dropped. Is something wrong? He closed the door. We received an anonymous complaint. About what? About you. He slid a manila folder across the desk. Your qualifications. Your residency hours. Your licensing. Someone has questioned the legitimacy of your credentials. My heart slammed against my ribs. That's ridiculous. I've done everything by the book. I know, he said calmly. But because the complaint was filed through the state board, we have no choice but to open an investigation. My head spun. Who would do this? Dr. Callahan didn't answer directly. You should prepare yourself. These processes can get ugly. That evening, as I sat in my apartment trying to process the nightmare unfolding, my phone buzzed. Marcus. Sis? You okay? I hesitated, then finally said it out loud. Someone filed a complaint against me. What? On what grounds? My credentials. My entire career is being questioned. He was silent for a beat. Then his voice dropped. Aaliyah, you don't think. I didn't want to say it, but we both knew. The next day, unable to hold back, I drove to my parents' house. My father answered the door, surprised. Aaliyah? Did you do it? My voice cracked with rage. Did you file that complaint? His face flushed. What?
No.
Why would I? Don't lie to me, Dad. My mother rushed to the door behind him. We'd never. Someone wants to destroy everything I worked for, I said through clenched teeth. And only a few people would know how to hit me like this. We didn't do this, my father said more firmly. You may not believe us, but we've done enough damage already. We would never try to take away what you built. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. Fear that he might lose me forever. Then who? I whispered, my legs shaking. Days later, the truth emerged. The anonymous complaint traced back to a distant relative, my father's estranged brother, Uncle Harold. A bitter man who always resented my father's success. And now, seeing me rise where his own children had failed, he aimed his venom at me. I wanted to take everything from your father, Harold confessed in the state board hearing, cornered by evidence. She was just a pawn. The board dismissed the complaint, clearing my name entirely. But the damage had already left its cracks. That night, my parents came to my apartment, both trembling. We failed you, my mother whispered, eyes red. But seeing you almost lose everything because of our family, it opened our eyes. My father nodded, voice shaking. We see now how deep our mistakes run. We're begging you, Aaliyah, please give us a chance to be better parents. I closed my eyes, tears slipping down. It's not about being perfect parents, I whispered. It's about being there. Even when I don't need you. Even when I'm already strong. They both nodded through their tears. And for the first time, I allowed myself to hope. The investigation was over. My name cleared, but something inside me still felt bruised. The weight of years spent fighting for my own worth was heavier than any complaint my uncle had tried to weaponize. One afternoon, I visited Marcus in his room. His recovery was remarkable, and soon, he'd be discharged. You look better every day, I smiled, placing his charts down. I feel better every day, Marcus replied, studying my face carefully. But you still look exhausted, Aaliyah. I let out a small laugh. I guess winning doesn't always feel like victory. He grabbed my hand. Then what will? What will finally make you feel free? The question sat between us like an open wound. That evening, I attended a hospital banquet where I was to receive an award, Outstanding Young Physician of the Year. The auditorium was packed. My name echoed in applause as I walked on stage. Cameras flashed. The board chair spoke glowing words. Dr. Roberts exemplifies resilience, brilliance, and compassion. She stands as a beacon for every young person who's ever been told they're not enough. As I accepted the plaque, I caught sight of my parents sitting in the very back row. My mother's face was streaked with tears. My father sat rigid, hands clutched, his jaw trembling. They had come. They had witnessed this. When the applause died down, I stood at the podium, clutching the microphone. I wasn't supposed to be here. I began, my voice steady. At least, that's what I was told for years. That I wasn't smart enough. That I was too fragile. That I would fail. The room fell silent. There are people in this room who know that version of my story. But I stand here today, not in defiance of those voices, but because of something far stronger, choice. I chose to believe in myself when others wouldn't. I chose to rise every time I was pushed down. I paused, scanning the audience. Tonight isn't just about medicine. It's about every child who is told they were useless. To anyone carrying those words like shackles, you are not useless. You were never useless. The applause returned like a wave, thunderous and rising. I stepped down from the podium, heart pounding, eyes glistening. Later that night, in the quiet hospital parking lot, I found my parents waiting beside my car. My mother was the first to speak, voice cracking. We don't deserve you. I shook my head gently. I don't need you to say that. Not anymore. My father stepped closer. For once, he didn't try to hide the rawness in his eyes. We failed you, Aaliyah. All those years, we let our fear masquerade as tough love. Tears streamed freely down my mother's cheeks. We thought we were protecting you from the pain of disappointment, but instead we became your greatest disappointment. The air between us trembled with the weight of long-buried truth. I wanted your belief, not your protection, I whispered. All I ever wanted was for you to see me. My father's voice cracked. We see you now.
Fully. Completely.
We see the woman you've become. And we are so proud. For the first time, I saw no defense in their faces. No justification. Only grief. Only regret. Only love. I closed my eyes. My chest rose and fell with a slow, deliberate breath. It took me years to forgive myself for needing your approval, I said softly. But tonight, I release all of it. I'm done carrying it. My mother reached for my hand, trembling. Can we start over? However long it takes. I hesitated. And then, gently, I placed my hand in hers. We'll start with today. The embrace that followed wasn't perfect. It was fragile, trembling, stitched together by shared wounds. But it was real. 6 months later, Marcus stood beside me as we opened my private clinic, the Phoenix Wellness Center, a symbol of what rises after everything burns. As the ribbon fell, my parents stood in the front row, clapping with tear-streaked smiles. In that moment, I understood something deeply. The power of rising doesn't come from proving others wrong. It comes from finally knowing you were right about yourself all along. I was never useless.